And good evening, and unfortunately, due to a camera error, we are recording this a couple of days after our actual visit. So, yes, when we came out of the London dungeon, it was an exceedingly hot day. We had walked along the embankment from the London Bridge experience, so we were hot before we got in. But anyone who's done the London dungeon will know some of those rooms are quite tight and quite small, and the waiting area, they were cramming people in. It was unbearably hot. So hot, actually, that I was very, very close to actually walking out and not going through. Fortunately, after the elevator, once you went down, the air conditioning did kick in at that point, and it was easier to cool down at that point. Obviously, on the boat ride, we were just hoping to get splashed as much as we could just to cool down a bit. But the show starts as normal with the lift, the boat ride, the Guy Fawkes experience, the torturer, all of those are quite normal. And then what we didn't realise was that the Great Fire of London show has actually moved. Now, a couple of years ago, it was the Plague Room. It was a tiny, tiny little room. It was like, and it really felt like a little pre-show. And they squeeze with 40 people in a group. They squeeze everyone in. And on a hot day like it was, it felt really uncomfortable. Now, with everything that's gone on recently with COVID, it was quite surprising that people were squeezed in quite so close. The room used to be used for the plague, the plague carriers or something like that, a few years ago, before COVID. But it was very unusual after COVID to be squeezed in such a tiny little room. But what it actually meant was all the really big effects of the Great Fire of London have now gone. So they used, if anyone remembers, it used to be in a big room. You would have flame effects. You'd slowly see the city burning around you. Actually, all you had now was a bit of story, everyone crammed together, no heat, no real lighting effects. And then the windows, which are obviously TV screens out into showing London, whatever, slowly show London burning. A couple of effects, couple of jumps, but to me, it was a much weaker version of the Great Fire of London show. I really liked the original one where you're up in the study and things happen around you. But what they've done is they've used that room for the witches' room. Now, we've seen it at a number of different dungeons around the UK. A witch is in a cell about to be punished for the night. She claims she's not a witch. And then it uses the old dungeon trick of misdirection, lights going off, and sudden appearances. But the way she moved around was quite good. You can always tell with these shows, once they tell you, stay seated, keep your feet under, someone's going to appear from somewhere. And it immediately makes me look for the door. And I could see it, and we were sat right by the door. But let's face it, the person I was with absolutely jumped like a lunatic when the witch appeared. So it's a fun take on that dark show where people appear from nowhere, and it seemed to work. So it was good. I can forgive losing the Great Fire show for that, and the Witches show is now, I think, a more permanent show. We then went on with the experience. So obviously we had the pie shop. Can never fault Mrs. Lovett. Mrs. Lovett is always great. Jack the Ripper, not Jack the Ripper, Sweeney Todd is great fun. And then the new show, Bodysnatchers, uses the gap between Sweeney Todd and Jack the Ripper. Now, this room is a box. It's been used for so many different things over the last year. And basically, they can just gut it and change it whenever they want. It's been the seance room. It's been a number of different things. It's been the hide and seek and the peeping Tom room. So this summer story was all about the Bodysnatchers. You walked into the room, and a body snatcher was there talking about what they used to do. And obviously there were body snatchers in the UK and in London, and they would provide the hospitals nearby. And it was an interesting story. There were a couple of effects as people were trying to get into where she was. And then somebody gets picked from the audience, put into a coffin, and the lights go out and some things happen. For the seasonal shows, compared to the really impressive Kirsch seance show a couple of years ago, and even the most recent one, it was probably one of the weaker summer shows. Still good fun, nice to see it, but not the best show that they've actually done. After that, you then get into Jack the Ripper, and I'm still going to say the 10 Bells pub scene is incredible. It still gets us every time. The jumps and scares in there, the speed with which Jack the Ripper comes out is always incredible and always good fun. The only other big change we noticed was after sentencing, there obviously used to be a show in the jails where you would have the guy who would try to escape from the jails, and every time the light would go off, you could get in and outside the jails and you could show a way to escape. That is now just an empty room. We just walk through that and then you get on the drop ride and you escape. So, maybe with everything that's been going on, the London Dungeon haven't done a massive overhaul, but because we haven't been for a couple of years, we actually saw 3 different shows. And it's great to see that they do keep changing things, bearing in mind that most of the audience there were tourists. They've probably never been before. They don't necessarily need to keep changing it every year, but they do. They've already announced they've got a spooky Halloween show coming for Halloween. They call themselves the Home of Halloween. So we're looking forward to seeing that. But all in all, it was really good fun. So we are going to sign off now. This is being filmed in the future, but obviously after this, we were then going off to Highgate Cemetery. So you'll have seen that video already. But we are going to sign off and we will see you at the next event. There's a lot of Halloween planning coming up. And we will see you at an event soon.